Is America having an, albeit very small, civil war? Columnist Lionel Shriver writes in this week's magazine about a standoff between the Texas National Guard and the US Border Patrol. Illegal immigration is causing more and more problems in the Republic, she writes. To tell us about it, Lionel joins me now. Lionel Shriver, welcome to Spectator TV.
Nice to talk to you again.
Now, Lionel, it's almost a cliche these days to say that America is divided, but in your column this week, you literally look at a state that is defying the federal government and using force to do it. Tell us about what's going on in Texas.
Well, I defined it as a tiny civil war because it is really about a state refusing to get with the program in relation to the federal government. It's a point of consternation with border states that the federal government is not doing its job in policing the southern border of the United States. And Governor Greg Abbott in Texas has decided to take matters into his own hands. And in one tiny place, he has sent in the Texas National Guard, which, despite the sound of it, is a state militia, to take over Eagle Pass. There's a park in Eagle Pass. It's a little town of only 29,000 people, but one that regularly receives something like on an average of 12,000 migrants per day, which is astonishing. So Abbott has sent his militia in to take over this territory and a little bit more on the sides, to try to stop illegal immigration in that particular area. I doubt it's very effective. I think that they're not very successful in stopping people from coming in, and they have nothing to do with these people but to turn them over to the border force that they're keeping out. So it may just add an extra administrative level. It seems symbolic to me. It's a gesture of rebellion, circa 1860.
and the federal government is taking the governor, or at least the state, to courts, right? I mean, they're fighting this out in the judiciary. But it's not even the first time that Greg Abbott has fought the federal government in the courts.
Oh, no, this is ongoing. And Texas put up these floating buoys in the Rio Grande to just try to stop people from swimming to the American bank of the river, and DC sued to have them removed because it's the border between two countries, and that is a federal matter. DC is also suing to cut the concertina wire that Texas has put on the banks of that river to prevent people from landing and crawling into the United States. What's especially weird about this conflict is that you would think that the federal government and the state of Texas would be on the same side. I mean, why aren't both parties interested in controlling the flow of illegal immigration into the United States? It's structurally and politically bizarre.
Well, for British viewers who might be more thinking about the European migrant crisis and not know so much about the US side, you've kind of hinted at it already, but just how severe are we talking about when we talk about this illegal migration problem?
Well, I hate to boggle our viewers' minds, but it's way worse than Europe, right? The scale of it is astonishing. So it's estimated that between 8 and 10 million illegal immigrants have entered the United States since Biden took office. And that's not an accident. That's not just a coincidence. And that's a significant swelling of a population of about 330 million people. And that it's putting enormous strain on not just border states, but now northern cities like New York and Chicago, which simply don't have the means of handling this many newcomers without any resources. It's costing a fortune. New York City, in particular, is in a quandary because not only has it declared itself a sanctuary city, which means they don't enforce immigration laws. It's another kind of tension between the feds and other local authorities. But it's also got a so-called right to shelter. Um, and that means that they are legally obliged to put up anybody who doesn't have a home. And they have been applying the right to shelter to not only New Yorkers who become homeless, but also just anybody who rocks up. I wish I'd known that when I was scraping as a postgraduate student. Would have saved me a lot of money. Uh, I I don't understand how this continues, because it will. There's no end in sight of this flow of people. There are now 68,000 people in the New York shelter system. They've completely run out of room. They've actually had to cut back on the budgets of all the other major departments in order to finance what I understand is of what is it, $400 per night per household, and by household that includes single adults. A single adult will make up a household. Uh, I mean, most normal Americans couldn't afford that, and it's just uh, astonishing. As much as I hate to say this, the only thing that is credibly going to bring a stop to this is the election of Donald Trump.
Gosh, and Lionel, I know how much it would pain you to say that.
It pains me fantastically.
Why do you think he will succeed? Because looking at his first presidency, after reading your piece, I did have a look at how successful he was, but he failed to get illegal migration down when he was president the first time round. ICE actually deported, in 2020, the fewest people ever deported since 2003 when the agency was set up. Isn't it just a pretty intractable problem?
It's incredibly intractable. And it comes down to problems with the law and outdated immigration statutes. This is the same in Europe, right? So the U.S. has signed up to the same kind of asylum policy that Europe has been pursuing, and it's ruinous. And the weird thing is that most of the people who are being let in and are allowed to apply for asylum don't qualify, even under very loose definitions of a legitimate asylum claim. But in the United States, and this is not that different from a lot of places in Europe, including Britain, there's such a backlog that if you've applied, you may be getting a court date 5 years from now, even 10 years from now, which is going to give these people, assuming they show up for the court date, which is a big question, it's going to give them grounds for remaining permanently because they will have established, households, probably had children who were American citizens. Um, so while the admission is temporary, we know better. It's not temporary.
But why would Trump be able to solve it better?
I think he will at least change the rhetoric. And I have to apologize for my tense, because I should have said he might, because we don't know that he's going to be elected president. So, but in let's say he is elected, he will put up a lot of bluster, and there's certainly going to be a fear on the migrant side that he talks such a hard line. All these people don't know the statistics, right? Talks such a hard line that it's important to get in while Biden is still president. In fact, that's one of the fears on the administrative front, that the more it looks as if Trump might get in, then there's going to be a big push for the border. And the irony of that is that it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy in terms of the presidency, because as I note in the column, this is one of the determinants of who wins the election. There's a huge anger in the country over the kind of images that are coming up, coming from the border, and it is changing people's votes on a widespread level. I mean, I'm not statistically supported here, but I read a lot of comments, and the number of lifelong Democrats that I encounter in the New York Times who claim that because of this issue alone, they're going to vote Republican. That number is huge, and so I think that an even further surge could easily push Trump over the line.